Yesterday we took a look at the V-Clan Collection Volume 6 support with the new Amon cards. But today we're going to take a look at Volume 5 with the brand new Genesis card, a new version of Sweep Command, and the new Reverse Dayusha.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey card fighters, welcome back to another card update, and today we once again tackle some brand new cards for V-Clan Collection. And as said in the intro, we got a couple of new spicy cards to tackle, and interesting enough, we see a brand new lineup for Regalia. We did anticipate more Relegator support with Voing Saber Reverse, yet that one has still to be released or revealed, but Sweep Command is a nice surprise. But on top of that, we also saw the main poster boy for Dayusha, or should I say Dimension Police, with Dayusha Reverse. So without any further ado, let's jump straight into these cards and see what these new cards bring to the table for their respective clans and archetypes. So we're going to start off with the big bulk of the support, which is the brand new Regalia cards for Genesis. And we start off with a non-Regalia card, which is this great one, Ordain Owl. And Ordain Owl has the effects, although when his unit is rode upon, you may call this card to the rearguard circle. So it's basically a pseudo 3+, which costs you a soul, which isn't ideal for Genesis as you want to use the soul for other skills. But if we take a look at the second skill, it makes sense, as that's auto rearguard circle. At the end of the battle, this unit boosted a unit with a Regalia in its card name cost. Put this unit into your soul and draw a card. So essentially you have it in your Vanguard circle, write a grade 2 Regalia, put it on the back, boost with the entire column, so you have a strong grade 2 turn, Vanguard attack, and then it goes back into the soul and draw a card, so you get essentially a 3+1. And if you draw it from your deck into your hand, it is essentially a cycle that adds more soul, which can be nice because that fuels your other cards. Sadly, it doesn't have the Regalia name, so it's not searchable, or you don't get extra value off of cards that require you to have a Regalia name. But overall, I think it's a nice card that can definitely see play in the Regalia engine. Now moving on to the grade 2, we've got an interesting new support card / grade 2 Vanguard unit, as we've got Regalia of Voe Ruji Yisa. And Ruji Yisa has the effect, although when his unit is placed on the Vanguard circle, cost counterblast 1. Look at the 5 cards from the top of your deck, choose up to 1 card from among them, call them to the rearguard circle, and shuffle your deck. If you call the unit with Regalia in its card name, choose up to 1 of your rearguards and put a card from your soul face down as a divine gauge for it. So this is essentially a searcher in your top 5, so you can call any type of card, which makes any type of pseudo engine you put in your deck, or any card you splash in as attack choice, more consistently available to you, as if it's on the top 5, you can call it. But it works even better with the Regalia engine, because now if you call Regalia, which can be like Norn, Yggdrasil, this card, maybe all the other grade 2s or grade 1s we saw in the previous support wave, then this card can immediately load up gauges while you're doing that, which is a nice setup really in the early game. Sadly, it's only a Vanguard circle skill, so it's only useful on turn 2 when you can write this, but in itself, it's pretty good value, so I think that in itself makes this card very warranted. But it also has a secondary effect, which is, although when his unit is placed in the rearguard circle, choose up to 2 cards with Regalia and their card names from your drop and put them into your soul. So this is essentially Soul Charge 2, which is nice because it's Soul Charge 2 from the drop, which has 2 beneficial effects. Because A, it doesn't blindly potentially Soul Charges triggers from your deck, which is always bad, and 2, it doesn't decrease your deck count, which means it's less strain on your longevity of game plan because you keep more cards in your deck. So I will always put more value on these type of soul charges than just blindly soul charges from your deck. Now I know Genesis and Premium has like effects that get you extra effects if you soul blast specific cards, but I don't know if those skills are attached to Regalia units. If that's the case, then this card in Premium becomes even better because you can keep reloading those Regalia units into your soul on a more consistent basis. So that's a nice added bonus to this particular card, if that's an interaction. I'm not too familiar with those cards to make that assessment, but it's a thing to think about. Now, if we move over to the new grade 3, we see some very similarities with the previous support for Regalia, as well as what we just talked about with this grade 2. Because for the brand new grade 3 for Regalia, we see Beloved Regalia Frigg. And Frigg has the effect, continues the Vanguard circle, all of your rearguards with Divine Gauge cannot leave the rearguard circle by your opponent's card effects and get power plus 5k. So again, just like the other Regalia grade 3s, we have like a blind protection on our cards with the divine gauges, but this is just a little bit different. Like any of the other grade 3s, is a different flavor of protection. In this case, your units can still be targeted, so things like stun or negating effects or whatnot still applies, but even with untargeted removal like retire and bind, they won't work on this type of protection because they are just stick to the board. The only thing that I don't know how this will interact with is with lock, because lock, technically speaking, removes the rearguard circle, because a rearguard circle will be turned into a locked circle. But then the question is, does this prevent the unit from being locked? Because essentially the unit does disappear from the rearguard circle, but at the same time the rearguard circle itself turns into a locked circle. So I don't know what the actual rulings here are and how this will interact, so that's something we have to clarify, and I'm not gonna make a call on that one because I don't know. Now, besides the general protection this card provides, we also have another effect, which is active Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, costs counter +1, look at the 5 cards from the top of your deck, choose up to 1 card from among them and call into the rearguard circle, and shuffle your deck. If you call the unit with a Regalian's card name, choose up to 2 of your rearguards and put a card from your soul face down as a divine gauge for each of them. So it's essentially the exact same skill as the grade 2 we just talked about, only instead of 1 gauge, it can generate 2 gauge if you choose a Regalia. So this, in my opinion, is a little bit better than the grade 2 for a very obvious reason, and that's the fact that you can use the skill multiple turns, and you're not reliant on being able to write that specific card, because you're gonna probably end up on this grade 3, because this is most likely gonna be your main grade 3, and Yggdrasil is gonna be your supporting grade 3. So this is honestly pretty decent, and again, it has the same upsides as the grade 2, where it makes your deck a lot more consistent, and this can basically search your Yggdrasils, which then can search your Norn, which then can search up and set up your multi-attack strategy. So a pretty good card in itself. But then it also has another effect, which is kind of interesting, as it's like the opposite what we've seen with Angelica, because the third effect of Frigg is Autumn Vanguard Circle. At the beginning of your turn, if your opponent's damage zone has 4 less cards, discard 5 divine gauges, choose one of your opponent's vanguards, and deal 1 damage. So where Angelica can heal you a card for 5 gauges, this can shoot a damage for 5 gauges. And if I'm gonna be honest, I feel like this is a bit better than the Angelica one, because this is a lot faster in value than Angelica's heal, because healing doesn't really do as much for you, whereas putting your opponent at 5 damage when you're gonna multi-attack with like significant numbers is honestly pretty good. Yes, it's a turn 4 play because it's the beginning of your turn, so you need to be sitting on this card, but honestly, it's very likely that you're gonna have like a second grade 3 turn, and with this skill, you're probably gonna make that the last turn of the game. So yeah, Frigg is a very nice card that's very flexible and has a lot of options, and will probably fit nicely comfortable at home with the current Regalia build. And Premium Regalia was already looking pretty damn good, and this card is just making it even better. So yeah, Regalia Genesis is gonna be very spicy and dangerous. But on top of this review, we also saw the reprints that we're gonna get for Regalia or for Genesis, and they are pretty nice, because these 3 cards are gonna be the reprints, which are, yes, are Norn, Yggdrasil, and the grade 2 Artemis. Now, the Artemis grade 2 is a little bit less consequential, but Norn and Yggdrasil being reprinted is very much necessary, because these are like the cornerstone of the strategy, and I believe they were getting quite pricey. So I think any Regalia player is going to be happy with these cards, and it's probably a lot cheaper for anybody to build a deck with these reprints. Now that said, that brings us to the next card, which is going to be the new Dimensional Robo reverse unit, as we've got Dark Dimensional Robo reverse Dayusha for Dimension Police. And this card is just as spicy as the new Regalia support, because Dayusha reverse has the effect, auto from hand, at the end of battle, your grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Dimensional Robo in its card name attacked. If all of the units that attacked this turn had Dimensional Robo in its card names, cost counter +1. Write this card as stand. Until the end of turn, this unit gets drive -1, and you cannot ride by card effects. So this is essentially a second Vanguard swing. And this isn't something new for Dimension Police, as we've seen Great Dayusha, Black, and in Premium we have like Restenders and whatnot, so this is not something new. But what's new about this is that this gives yet another Vanguard attack to certain multi-attack strategies. Yes, the requirement and the restrictions is that all your units that attack need to be Dimensional Robo, and you need to have a Dimensional Robo Vanguard, but that's not really a restriction in most situations, because yes, Black won't work. You cannot attack with Black, ride the Dimensional Robo Vanguard, and then attack and then go into this. That sadly doesn't work, because the Black isn't the Dimensional Robo. But you can attack with like a Dimensional Robo Dailiner or the original Ayusha. Then you can go into Great Ayusha, attack with Great Ayusha, and then you can go into this after Great Ayusha. Because the thing is about Great Ayusha's the condition is that you didn't ride this turn. But it doesn't say you cannot ride after it. And Reversed Ayusha says you cannot ride after it, but it didn't say anything that you ride before it. So you can go from one Dimensional Robo, maybe Dailiner, into Great Ayusha, and then into Reversed Ayusha, which gives you 3 Vanguard swings, which all generate force markers and sizable power, potential crit pressure, and that's pretty good. And yes, you might think to yourself, you cannot really combine this with any other strategy because you need to attack with all Dimensional Robo units, but that's not necessarily the case. Your rear guards can literally be anything, but you just need to make sure you did not attack with them before you activate Reversed Ayusha skill, because you can still attack with non-dimensional robos after you activated the Reversed Ayusha skill. And in Premium, this is very nice, because this can literally superior ride over any stride card. As long as your hard card is a Dimensional Robo unit, it doesn't matter what you stride, because you still can select the, basically look at the hard card's name and still meet the condition to superior ride. So, like, you can go into the Excalibur stride that allows you to reset, so you can have like 2 massive Vanguard swings and then immediately go into this for an extra Vanguard swing. Or you can, like, Ultimate stride, have like the Zerov Dragon triple Vanguard swing and then end up with this as a 4 Vanguard swing. Like, these all are pretty interesting strategies that just extends on your already initial plays, which is pretty good because Dimensional Police was already very Grade 3 heavy, so swapping a Grade 3 for this that just adds another layer of attack pattern on top of it is probably not an issue. But it also has another effect which probably will mainly be like in V Premium and not necessarily in Premium, because its secondary effect is act on Vanguard Trickle once per turn, cost, lock 2 rearguards with Dimensional Robo in their card name, choose one of your opponent's Vanguard, and it gets power minus 10k until the end of turn. So essentially when you activate this skill, you have like a Persona ride power buff to your field, as every single attack is essentially 10k stronger. Now this won't come up all too often. The only situation where this then is pretty nice is that if you have another copy of himself in your hand, so you can use this skill, minus 10k power, attack with your Vanguard, and the superior ride himself on top of it. Or if you have old Great Ayusha, then you can go into Great Ayusha and then go into another Reversed Ayusha while your opponent was minus 10k. Is that better than like going for a Dailiner? I don't know. Dailiner has the upside that you have the more consistent access to your Grade 3s as it searches that, and you come with crit pressure, but maybe the minus 10k can be suffice. Overall, Reversed Ayusha will probably see a lot of play because it's very generic with its first skill and can definitely be very devastating during the right circumstances. Oh, and one thing I forgot, this does work very nicely with Daikaiser, because you can have like Daikaiser, attack with it, go into this, on top of it, Daikaiser will pop out of the soul, so you have yet another attack extender on top of everything that you're already doing, with the potential guard break on top of everything. So yeah, pretty damn solid. Now another card that might change the landscape quite a bit, it's a new Narukami card, which honestly is kind of insane, because we've got a Relegator Sweep Command Dragon. And Sweep Command Dragon always has been a very interesting card, but this new iteration of him is pretty spicy, because its effect is, although when a unit is placed on a Vanguard Circle or Rearguard Circle, cost Soul plus 1, choose one of your opponent's front row rearguards, bind it, choose up to one of your opponent's back row rearguards, and move it to an open front row rearguard circle. This is pretty generic. We've seen this time and time on any other Narukami card, so nothing special about this particular skill. But if we look at the second skill, that's where things are starting to get spicy. Because the second skill is All-Out Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, when your opponent's rearguard is bound during your turn, choose up to one of your opponent's front row rearguards and bind it. And if your damage zone has 4 or more cards, cost, counter plus 1, and soul plus 1, get an imaginary gift Axel, choose a card with the Eradicator's card name from your drop, and call to the rearguard circle. So now, essentially, if you ride this, you can bind one of your opponent's front units, move one back row to the front row, then use the secondary skill immediately after that to bind that card as well, and then potentially get another Exile Circle that draws you a card, and then call a card from your drop, which can have a nice rearguard circle skill that can be like a Restand or a Choho, maybe a Strong Beater or anything, or maybe a Searcher. It's basically good generic value, and you can maybe Superior call a copy of himself, which then can use his on-play skill again. Now in V Premium, this doesn't really change up a lot, if I'm gonna be very honest. Like, it can be a nice card that allows you to generate a bit more value and potentially accelerate Exile Circles early on, but I don't really think it's gonna have too much of an impact there. Where the value of this card lies is Premium, because in Premium this card is actually pretty insane. Now you might think to yourself, how does this work? Well, in Premium they have a specific starter which allows you, if you retire one of your opponent's units, to check the top 7 or 10 cards and search a copy of Sweep Command and write it. So that means you can superior ride during the battle phase. So you can just basically attack with your units, have your strides and whatnot, and then if you retire during the battle phase, you can use the starter, put it into the soul, check the top 10 or top 7. If it's here, you can write it and have another Vanguard swing. But more importantly, because you wrote it, its effects will activate, thus you bind a card, move a card from the front, then you can use its secondary effect, which bind another card, then potentially Counterblast, Soul Blast to get another Exile Circle and call another unit onto the field, which then allows you to multi-attack. And in Premium, you have access to more Eradicators, like Sigma for example, which is a restander that can restand if your opponent's if the attack did not hit. So when your opponent's at 5 damage, this allows you to get into very deadly situations. So this is an option, and you might think to yourself, now hold on a moment, you specifically need to retire with the starter, but the rest of the support is now binding. The thing is, if you're gonna rely a lot on the V Premium support, yes, retiring your opponent's rearguards might be tough because you immediately bind it, unlike what we had in the previous support with G. The thing is, it doesn't matter how you retire the units. So if your opponent has like a grade 1 in the front row, or you can move a grade 1 to the front row, or a grade 3, just attack into it. If they don't guard, it still sees as the retirement, which fulfills the condition, does allow you to do the whole combo play. But that's just from an offensive standpoint. There's also a defensive strategy, which is a lot more easier to fulfill. Because Narukami has G-guards that retire and bind, like Impede, and I believe Bulwark is the same thing, that retires units. So that means, if you G-guard, and that starter is on the field, and you snipe one of their units, and in Impede's case, you can potentially snipe 2, you can then superior ride into a new Sweep Command, which then can snipe 2 more cards, and if you call a Eradicator from your drop onto the field that also snipes something from with an on-place effect, that potentially allows you to snipe 5 cards during your opponent's turn with 1 G-guard. It does cost you potentially 2 soul and a counterblast, depending on what the superior call card costs for retirement, but one of the soul is going to be refunded because you put the starter into the soul. So essentially it's 1 soul, 1 counterblast, and the G-guard to potentially snipe 4 to 5 cards during your opponent's battle phase. So that can easily disrupt your opponent's field, disrupt their entire combo, and just be pretty damn insane. And also don't forget, you draw a card because you just generate an extra Exile Circle. And the superior called unit can be grade 2, which can be another interceptor, which can help you to survive the turn. So overall, this card is actually pretty damn interesting, and I think it probably won't see a lot of interaction with in V Premium, but I can definitely see this card suddenly being run in Premium together with the original starter that allows you to do the offensive and defensive play. And the Eradicator archetype was already the go-to strategy within Premium. Yes, you had the Vanquisher variant, but Eradicator was already pretty damn good. And this can easily be slotted in as a engine within that Eradicator archetype, which doesn't take away anything from what your strategy is trying to do. So yeah, that's pretty damn good. Also, an interesting thing that I don't know how this would work, but as soon as the secondary effect is a once per turn, if you write this thing, use the effect, then the once per turn to get the extra Exile Circle, if you then stride Stunned Verse on top of it, and then stride out, does the once per turn on this card reset? Because did it become a new version of the card, which usually is the case with once per turn that it basically resets. If a unit on the regular circle with a once per turn dies and recalls, you can use it again. But does this also apply if you stride out? Because I believe there's a ruling where red text stays on the card. So does that mean that the once per turn is still remembered? Something to think about. Something to think about. It could be very interesting. Oh, and one thing before we go, we also know 2 reprint cards for Eradicators, because we know that Suhil is going to be reprinted, as well as Spark Raised Dragon. Very good, solid, generic cards for the archetype. I don't know if we're going to see play or not, but it's nice to see more support, more reprints for this respective archetype that's going to get more support. But with that said, that's all that we have today. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of the new Regalia support, Dayusha Reverse, or should I say Reverse Dayusha, as well as Sweep Command Dragon. A lot of very interesting cards, and unlike yesterday's video, I think basically all the cards that we talked about today are relevant, either in premium or V premium. There's a lot of potential here where these cards can be pretty nutty, and I think this is the reason why V clan collections are always very exciting, because there's a lot of potential for cards to be useful. But that's my thoughts about these cards. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over patreon.com/FranklinInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/FranklinInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I've been Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one!